Modern Horizons 3 is a very hyped set, and with good reason. Modern Horizons 2 is arguably one of the biggest sets we've gotten in the past decade, and did a ton to shake up multiple formats with its impact. That being said, while it did introduce a bunch of new cards to the format, it also reprinted a bunch of cards that were high priced and brought their values down. The good thing in a set like this is that while you do get new things to shake things up, other cards can get reprints, temporarily becoming more accessible, which is obviously good for the player base of various formats. So in today's video, I want to go through my wish list of reprints for Modern Horizons 3, share my thoughts for the cards I'd most like to see get reprinted, and then I'd like to hear your thoughts. So without further ado, let's jump into the video. Thanks everybody so much for being here. As always, I do appreciate you. And as you go ahead and like the video, click that subscribe button if you're not subscribed to the channel. And if you want to click the bell icon to be notified when new videos are posted, I certainly would not be mad. In fact, quite the opposite. Now, we're going to be talking today about my wish list for Modern Horizons 3 on the reprint side of things. Obviously, we've seen some of the new cards and we previewed them. We did see a couple of reprints, but nothing huge so far outside of the fetch lands. And we did also see that there will be special guest slots for at least Solitude. I don't know about the other elementals yet. So because it's possible they're going to be in there already, I did not include them in this video. Obviously, hopefully we do get reprints of those. They're like really good cards, really impactful, but I'm excluding them because they may already be getting reprinted. We know Solitude is, so I'm not really sure about the rest. Without further ado, let's jump into it. So my first one up here is Gemstone Caverns. Now, if you guys are familiar with Gemstone Caverns, it is an extremely good card. If it's in your opening hand and you're not the starter, you can put it on the board with a counter, exile a card from your hand, and then it can tap for either colorless or any color if it has a luck counter on it. An extremely good land card that, despite being reprinted multiple times, has just held on to value. There's been a few periods where you can pick it up a little cheaper, but typically it has rebounded quite quickly. As of now, the cheapest version of this card is $50, and that was the Lord of the Rings Tales of Middle-earth version, which did have like an alternate name. For all intents and purposes, it's the same card, and honestly, it was down to maybe like $39.40 for a little while, and then went up about $10. I am hoping personally we get a double dip of this, make it more accessible. Honestly, if they want to make it a rare, that would be sweet, but I guess I would understand if they didn't. I just think no matter how many times Gemstone Caverns gets reprinted, it's still going to hold some bit of value, but it's pretty pricey, and it is a good card that is legal in almost every format, so I am very much on board with this one getting a reprint here on the lower end, because this kind of goes from like most desired, least desired to most desired. All of these would be good reprints, but some, as we get towards the end of the video, are going to be a little bit more heavy on the wants. I'll explain when we get there. So next up, we've got Sword of Hearth and Home. This card was actually introduced in Modern Horizons 2, and I believe actually had a Lord of the Rings reprint. Either way, the card itself is really good, as are most of the swords. This one was a mythic in Modern Horizons 2. It is around $11 at the cheapest at the time that I'm actually recording this, but I mean, I think reprinting this as a rare in Modern Horizons 3 a couple of years after it came out would definitely do a lot to make it even a little bit more accessible. It is definitely a really solid card. While it's not as powerful as some of the other swords, it's still a card that could be a really good inclusion in a lot of commander decks. Plus, again, you know, it is playable in Modern, but I think, you know, from a commander perspective, trying to get some cards closer to budget, this card would be a really good slot option there. And you do need some rares that are, you know, maybe downshifts that will still have a bit of value, but are going to end up, you know, not being as crazy as they were. Force of Negation. This card has been printed only a couple of times. It was in Modern Horizons 1, and then it was in Double Masters 2022. So it has been about 2 years almost, or will be close to 2 years by the time it actually comes out. The cheapest version of this card right now is around $39. That was the original from Modern Horizons 1. It does have a few different variants, full art, you know, foil etched, whatever. But it's a strong card. It's a slightly weaker Force of Will, but it's also just a really, really good card for blue, and it just hasn't done much to dip value despite, you know, multiple reprints. I think it had a little time in Double Masters 22 where it was maybe closer to 30, but it's rebounded as cards of this nature typically do. So I'm hoping they run this one back a couple years later and give us another reprint of Force of Negation. Now, the next one up is Cyclonic Rift. Now, if you're watching this thinking, didn't this just get reprinted in Ravnica Remastered? Yes, it did. And it got reprinted in Ravnica Remastered as a mythic, which means it was certainly not easy to pull. But despite that fact, and despite the reprint that it got, the card is right back up to almost where it was originally at about $30. I don't understand why the card's value. I mean, I guess I understand because it's playable and good, but like no matter how many times they reprint this card, it just seems to go back up and back up and back up. So I'm on the bandwagon here of like, give us another printing of this. Like really kind of hammer it down, because obviously it will do a little bit to drop the price in the short term, and it will end up rising, as most cards that are considered staples in a lot of formats do. This is one of the best board wipes, if not the best board wipe for blue, and it's just an extremely powerful card. Give us Cyclonic Rift as a rare, put it in the set, just make some value there, and if you need to make a premium version of it, by all means do so. Ravnica Remastered as a set was pretty bad, I think, in terms of the overall value pulled versus investment in the product. Not to say it didn't have some good reprints in it, and obviously had like serialized cards and stuff, but overall, put this in Modern Horizons 3. I think it'd be a really, really good inclusion, and it'd be nice to see them double down. It's not unprecedented because we have seen these double dip reprints before. Douthie Voidwalker is a really, really good card. Again, I feel like I keep saying this is kind of the theme of the video. Of course, I want reprints of cards that are good. It's not the most expensive card in the world. It's about $12.50, give or take, right now, and it was only in Modern Horizons 2, so it doesn't have a ton of, reprints at all, other than I think it was a store championship promo, but that was a limited quantity and is also quite expensive. So the card itself, really good. It does a lot of things, and it's just really fun within Rogue, but I'm pretty sure is also quite good in competitive Modern. Disclaimer, I don't follow Modern extensively, but when I was researching cards for this video, I was like, this is a card that sees a lot of representation and would definitely be nice to get a run back a few years later. So I'd like to see this. I'm sure, Modern players would be happy with it too, but this card has a place in Commander, and it's definitely a strong card. I think there's a real shot we could see this one in here, because obviously, like I said, they are going to need to sort of fill some places. Next up, we've got Sword of Feast and Famine. Now, this, in my opinion, is one of the best swords that have been printed, period, and this card has actually not been reprinted for a bit. I believe Double Masters was the last time it was. It is around $34 for the cheapest copy of it. There are some premium versions of this. It is a really, really good card in general, but on the end of swords, it is the most expensive sword, I believe, and as we did see them print swords in last, Modern Horizons 2, it's only reasonable to believe we could get more here. I do think it's possible they put another new one, but I don't know what else we need from the sword cycle that we don't have, or maybe they just create a new one that works, kind of similar to what they did with Outlaws at Thunder Junction. But I think Sword of Feast and Famine, it's been 4 years, give or take, since it was reprinted, and it would be a really good candidate for inclusion in the set. It would probably stay a mythic, but you could certainly give it like another borderless treatment or something to that effect if you wanted to bling it out, as we know they like to do. And plus, with Modern Horizons having some retro frame treatments, this would look really nice in a retro frame variant, I think. Next up is one that I think would be one of the more profound cards to reprint, although I have to say I'm not sure if they will, and that is Orcish Bowmasters. Now, this card, of course, you've heard of it. Everyone's heard of it. It's extremely powerful. It has dominated Modern. It has dominated other formats. On Arena, I'm pretty sure they just straight up, eroded it right off the bat because of how good it is. The card is Modern legal because Lord of the Rings was Modern legal. The question becomes, do they make a Universes Within version of this card in that set? Now, the card it's Orcish Bowmasters. I mean, it's not Lord of the Rings specific. I mean, there's plenty of different orcs. There's plenty of orcs even in the game that weren't part of Lord of the Rings, but this card is around $35 at the cheapest, and is just an absolutely disgusting card in terms of what it can do. But I would really like to see it get a reprint sooner rather than later. It'll be about a year by the time this set comes out from when Lord of the Rings came out, and it's such a powerhouse in Modern. The question becomes, again, do they reprint it as a Universes Within? Could they just call it Orcish Bowmasters? There might be some logistics stuff there with that. Lord of the Rings, I don't know. I don't think they're going to try to sell Lord of the Rings again in terms of re-releasing the product, so there's no reason to think this couldn't, get a print there. But this is more of a wishful thinking, kind of hopeful, than it is an actual prediction. But it's my wish list, so, you deal with what's here. Next up, Prismatic Vista. Now, I know this just got reprinted as a special guest card, but I also don't think that's going to do much for the value. Right now, it's around $24 for the special guest variant. I mean, this card was like $30, so it didn't drop a ton, and I don't expect that the special guest version to stay that low, as long as this card doesn't get more prints. It was in Modern Horizons 1, and I think it might have had one other print. It might have been an Zendikar Rising Expedition, but don't quote me on that. I forgot to check before the video, and I'm already recording, so here we are. But I know it's been printed very few times. It is an extremely good card. It's a fetch land for basic lands, and it doesn't come in tapped, so it's just a strictly better version of Evolving Wilds, Terramorphic Expanse, what have you. Again, a card that would go a long way towards helping upgrade decks without breaking anything, and it would just be really nice to see this get another reprint, especially because we are getting, the other fetch lands in here. Give us this fetch land too. reprint it in here, hopefully bring its value down to closer to like 15, 20 for a while. Again, I know some of these are double dipping, but you have to take into consideration the sets that they're coming out in, and the fact that Modern Horizons is typically going to be geared towards Modern before anything else, so this card could definitely use a reprint there. I think some people may want the opportunity to get their hands on one. Please give it to us. I think Prismatic Vista is definitely one that is a really, really good inclusion. Next up, Esper Sentinel. Now, of course, this card is extremely good. It is just, in pods and Commander, it's just a really, really unpleasant card to have to play around, but it's so powerful for a 1-drop mana, and it's a $31 card right now, with its only printing being Modern Horizons 2. It was on the list at one point. It had a list slot placement, but the list is such a small thing, and the odds of hitting anything on the list is even harder, so to consider that any kind of a real reprint is not fair, in my opinion. I do think this card should probably be in here. I mean, given it is a Modern card, it was new to Modern when it came out in Modern Horizons 2, this should be included. I just think it's a matter of time. I could be wrong, of course. It could happen. It does happen. But I think there's a good chance we get this in here. So fingers crossed, Esper Sentinel is going to end up being included. And finally, another card that came out in Modern Horizons originally is Urza's Saga. Now, if you haven't heard of Urza's Saga, it is probably one of the best sagas in the game. It is an extremely good card that can fetch cards like Soul Ring and Mana Crypt directly from the deck, and it sees an incredible amount of play, and with good reason. But it is around $34 right now for the list variant, actually, which is the cheapest, but all of them are pretty close until you start getting into foils, at which point the prices go up astronomically. Again, a card that was new to Modern in Modern Horizons 2. It's over 3 years old at this point. Give us a reprint of it, make it more accessible. I don't think it would drop the price significantly. I actually wouldn't be shocked if they did reprint this and made it a mythic, which would be kind of annoying, but at least there'd be more copies of it in circulation, and you'd probably have a chance to grab it at least at some point. That's going to do it for this video. Let me know what you guys think of my wish list, and then let me know what you're hoping to pull or what you're hoping to get reprinted in Modern Horizons 3, because there's plenty of candidates, and it's a decent sized set, so hopefully there'll be more than just what I covered here. Do you agree or disagree? Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.